Locked on the mathematical mansion, a telltale proof. Prologue, the architecture of truth. True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and but why will you say that I am mad? The disease had been one of the mind, yes, but a divine madness, mathematical, precise, inevitable as gravity. Listen. And observe how healthily, how calmly, I can tell you the whole story of that mansion, that theorem, that 7-year nightmare that began in childhood and ended in, but no, it has not ended. It beats still beneath the floorboards of my consciousness. You fancy me mad. But madmen know not what they do. I knew. Oh, how deliberately, how methodically I entered that dark house of numbers, that mansion of infinite rooms where each chamber contained a fragment of the greatest puzzle ever posed to human reason. The house had no address. It existed in the liminal space between waking and sleeping, between knowing and unknowing, between the possible and the proven. And I, Andrew Wiles, I was both its prisoner and its architect. 1. The descent into darkness. It began, as all mathematical journeys must, with a child's wonder turned to obsession. I was 10 years old when I first encountered Fermat's last theorem in a library book, that deceptively simple statement that had tormented the greatest minds for 3 centuries. There exist no 3 positive integers a, b, and c such that a to the power of n plus b to the power of n equals c to the power of n for any integer value of n greater than 2. Pierre de Fermat had scrawled in the margin of his Arithmetica, I have discovered a truly marvelous proof of this, which this margin is too narrow to contain. Those words were a curse, a riddle wrapped in an enigma, a door that opened onto an infinite corridor of mathematical night. From that moment, the mansion began to build itself around me. At first, it was merely a room, my childhood bedroom, where I would lie awake calculating, dreaming of elegant proofs that dissolved like morning mist. Then, as I grew older, the house expanded. University lecture halls became antechambers. Libraries transformed into galleries lined with the portraits of dead mathematicians, their eyes following me with expressions of pity and warning. But it was not until I made my decision, that fateful choice to lock myself away from the world and attempt what others deemed impossible, that the mansion revealed its true form. 2. The first room, forgetting. I awoke into darkness, though I could not remember falling asleep. The light was wrong, neither natural nor artificial, but something between, like illumination filtered through centuries of dust and disappointment. It revealed only suggestions, the curve of unfamiliar objects, shadows that seemed to move when I was not looking directly at them. I was sitting on something cold and angular. My body ached as though I had been motionless for years. When I tried to stand, my legs betrayed me, trembling like compass needles near magnetic north. Who was I? The question echoed in the hollow spaces of my skull, but no answer came. I reached for memory and found only void, a mathematician's nightmare, consciousness without context, knowledge without a knower. The room was filled with shapes. Vertical forms branching from the floor. Horizontal planes suspended at precise heights. Curved surfaces that reflected nothing. Each object was alien yet somehow essential, like theorems stated in a language I had once known but forgotten. I approached the nearest form, for legs supporting a flat surface, and touched it with trembling fingers. The contact sent electricity through my neurons. Chair? The word materialized like a solution to an equation I had not known I was solving. But even as the word came, I sensed its inadequacy. This was not merely a chair. It was chairness itself, the Platonic ideal of sitting, of rest, of the human need to pause in the midst of thinking. And I understood, with growing horror, that everything in this house was similarly archetypal, not objects but concepts, not furniture but the fundamental categories by which mind organizes reality. I was not in a house. I was inside thought itself. 3. The topology of memory. The house was vast, impossibly, non-Euclideanly vast. Corridors stretched beyond sight, their perspective lines converging on points that seemed to recede as I approached. Stairs ascended to floors that could not exist, given the building's apparent height from outside. Rooms folded into themselves like Klein bottles, their geometry obeying laws I could not name. Each chamber contained objects that triggered cascades of recovered meaning. A bed recalled the concept of sleep, and with it, dreams of numbers dancing in infinite sequences. A kitchen knife brought back the notion of division, of cutting holes into parts. A mirror, oh, that accursed mirror, reflected not my face but a human-shaped absence, a placeholder where identity should have been. I wandered for hours, days, years, time had no meaning in that place. The house breathed around me, expanding and contracting like a lung, each breath a cycle of forgetting and remembering. I began to understand its rhythm, to anticipate which memories would surface in which rooms. In the study, I found books whose pages were blank until I looked at them, whereupon equations would materialize like frost on winter glass. Complex analysis. Algebraic number theory. Elliptic curves. The mathematics came back to me not as knowledge but as recognition, like meeting old friends whose names I had forgotten but whose faces remained dear. And always, in every room, there was the whisper, prove me. Finish me. End me. 4. The gallery of the defeated. On the 3rd floor, or perhaps it was the 30th, I discovered a gallery lined with portraits. Each frame contained the face of a mathematician who had attempted the proof and failed. Their eyes, painted with supernatural skill, followed me as I walked. Euler, his single eye burning with the intensity of incomplete insight. Gauss, the prince of mathematics, his expression one of profound frustration. Kummer, who had come so close with his ideal numbers that failure seemed a cosmic joke. Cauchy, Fermat himself, even the ancient Greeks, all were there, all watching, all silently asking, will you succeed where we have failed? At the end of the gallery hung an empty frame. My frame, I realized with mounting dread. I was meant to join them, to add my portrait to this catalogue of brilliant defeat. But as I stared at that empty space, something else stirred in my memory. Not mathematics, something more fundamental. The reason I had entered this mansion in the first place. I was not just any mathematician. I was Andrew Wiles. And I had a secret weapon that the others had lacked. 5. The Taniyama-Shimura conjecture. In the mansion's deepest basement, though I cannot say how I descended there, for the stairs seemed to multiply beneath my feet, I found a room unlike all others. It was perfectly circular, its walls covered with equations written in scripts I did not recognize but somehow understood. Sanskrit numerals mixed with medieval Latin, Arabic algebra intertwined with modern notation. And there, in the center of the room, stood a pedestal bearing a single theorem. Every elliptic curve over the rational numbers can be associated with a modular form. the Taniyama-Shimura conjecture. I laughed, actually laughed, despite the horror of my situation. For I remembered now why I had dared to attempt what others had deemed impossible. Previous mathematicians had tried to attack Fermat's last theorem directly, battering themselves against its impregnable logic. But I had discovered a secret passage, a connection between seemingly unrelated mathematical realms. If Fermat's last theorem were false, if there existed positive integers a, b, c, and n greater than 2 such that a to the power of n plus b to the power of n equals c to the power of n, then one could construct an elliptic curve so bizarre, so pathological, that it could never be modular. But if all elliptic curves were modular, the conjunction was like a key turning in a lock. The room began to transform around me, its circular walls unfolding into the workshop where I would forge my proof. 6. The workshop of Galois. The workshop materialized like a theorem proven, suddenly, inevitably, perfectly. Blackboards covered every surface, their slate faces hungry for chalk. Tables groaned under the weight of journals and notebooks, centuries of mathematical thought compressed into physical form. And there, in the center, waited the tools I would need. The theory of elliptic curves, gleaming like a surgeon's scalpel. Galois representations, coiled and ready like steel springs. The Heck algebra, humming with barely contained power. Modular forms, beautiful and terrible as angels. I began to work. The proof grew like a living thing, each lemma spawning theorems, each theorem demanding new insights. My hands moved across the blackboard with mechanical precision, guided by an intelligence that seemed both mine and not mine. I was a medium channeling 3 centuries of mathematical evolution, every failed attempt now revealed as a necessary step toward this moment. Time lost all meaning. I did not eat, did not sleep, did not pause except to sharpen chalk or turn to a new board. The mansion provided everything I needed, as though it were nourishing itself on my work, growing stronger with each completed argument. And always, that rhythm beneath the floorboards, thump thump, thump thump, the heartbeat of truth itself, growing stronger as my proof approached completion. 7. The error. On what I would later calculate as day 2847 of my sojourn in the mansion, I discovered my mistake. I had been working on a crucial step, showing that a certain Galois representation was irreducible, when I realized that my argument contained a gap. Not a small error, the kind that could be patched with an afternoon's work, but a fundamental flaw that threatened to bring down the entire structure. The mansion reacted to my despair like a living organism. The walls seemed to press closer. The light dimmed to the feeble glow of a dying star. The portraits in the gallery began to smile, knowing, pitying smiles that said, "Welcome, brother. Take your place among the defeated." I collapsed onto the workshop floor, surrounded by hundreds of blackboards covered with 7 years of work, all of it now as worthless as ash. The heartbeat beneath the floorboards had stopped. The mansion held its breath, waiting for me to surrender. But I did not surrender. In that moment of absolute darkness, I remembered something Richard Taylor had said to me years before: the error is not the end of the proof, it is part of the proof. Every mistake teaches us something essential about the structure of truth. I rose from the floor, picked up my chalk, and began again. 8. The collaboration. The mansion, sensing my renewed determination, began to change once more. New rooms appeared, spaces I had not seen before, filled with tools and insights I had not previously possessed. And in these rooms, I was not alone. Richard Taylor materialized first, not as a ghostly presence but as himself, solid and real, carrying armloads of papers on Iwasawa theory. Together, we attacked the error from new angles, our combined insights creating resonances that neither of us could have achieved alone. Other mathematicians joined us, Nick Katz with his deep knowledge of p-adic methods, Carl Rubin bringing insights from arithmetic algebraic geometry. The mansion expanded to accommodate them all, becoming not a prison but a workshop, not a tomb but a forge where mathematical truth was hammered into existence. We worked together in a harmony I had never experienced in the waking world. Ideas flowed between us like electricity, each insight sparking new possibilities in the others. The mansion itself seemed to participate, its geometry shifting to accommodate our needs, new blackboards appearing when we required them, reference books materializing on shelves that had been empty moments before. The error that had seemed so devastating became the key to an even more elegant approach. By forcing us to dig deeper, to examine assumptions we had taken for granted, it led us to insights that strengthened not just our proof but our understanding of the entire mathematical landscape we were exploring. 9. The convergence. The end, when it came, was both sudden and inevitable. Like a symphony reaching its final chord, every thread of our argument came together in a moment of perfect mathematical harmony. The last equation wrote itself on the blackboard, not through my hand but through some deeper force, as though the universe itself were eager to complete the proof. Therefore, the Frey curve cannot exist, and Fermat's last theorem is proven. QED. The mansion began to tremble. Not with destruction but with completion, like a puzzle box opening after 3 centuries of waiting. The walls became transparent, revealing the landscape beyond, not the English countryside where my physical body sat working, but something more fundamental, the topology of mathematical truth itself, a realm where all proven theorems existed in eternal, crystalline perfection. The heartbeat returned, no longer frantic but steady, strong, eternal, thump thump, thump thump, the pulse of absolute certainty. 10. The awakening. I opened my eyes in my study at Princeton. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating stacks of papers, blackboards covered with equations, coffee cups grown cold over days or weeks of work. My body ached from sitting too long in one position, my hand cramped around a piece of chalk worn down to nothing. But there, on the final blackboard, complete and perfect, was the proof. I was Andrew Wiles. I had just proven Fermat's last theorem. And I understood, with crystal clarity, that the mansion had been real, not as a physical place but as something more essential, the space where impossible problems go to become possible, where the human mind transcends its limitations and touches the eternal. The proof was finished, but the mansion remained. I could feel it in the back of my consciousness, its rooms still waiting, its corridors still extending into mathematical infinities yet to be explored. Other theorems waited there, Riemann's hypothesis, the Birch and Swinnerton-Dyer conjecture, problems not yet imagined. And I knew that someday, when the next impossible question arose, I would enter those dark rooms again, stumble through the furniture of partial understanding, and search for the light switch that would illuminate new territories of truth. For now, though, I sat in ordinary sunlight, surrounded by ordinary objects, holding in my hands something extraordinary, the solution to a problem that had haunted mathematics for 350 years. And beneath the floorboards of my mind, I could still hear it, faint but persistent, eternal and unshakable. Thump thump. Thump thump. The heartbeat of proven truth. Epilogue, the telltale proof. They say I am changed since that time, that there is something different in my eyes, something that speaks of places where ordinary mortals fear to tread. Perhaps they are right. When I look in mirrors now, I see not just my own face but the reflection of every mathematician who has ever stared into the abyss of the impossible and chosen to jump. The proof stands. It has been verified, published, celebrated. Awards have been given, honors bestowed. But none of that matters compared to what I learned in the mansion, that mathematics is not just the study of numbers and shapes but the architecture of transcendence itself, the blueprint by which finite minds may grasp infinite truths. Sometimes, late at night when I am working on new problems, I hear it again, that soft, insistent rhythm beneath the floorboards. Thump thump. Thump thump. And I know that somewhere, in a house with no address, in rooms that exist between waking and sleeping, other mathematicians are stumbling through the darkness, searching for light switches that will illuminate new chambers of understanding. The mansion waits for them all. Patient as prime numbers, eternal as pi, inevitable as proof itself. And when they find their way home, carrying new theorems like torches from Prometheus's fire, I will understand the rhythm they bring with them. Thump thump. Thump thump. The sound of human reason beating against the walls of the impossible, until even the impossible surrenders to the inexorable advance of mathematical truth. Perhaps I could best describe my experience of doing mathematics in terms of entering a dark mansion. One goes into the first room, and it's dark, completely dark. One stumbles around bumping into the furniture, and gradually you learn where each piece of furniture is, and finally, after 6 months or so, you find the light switch. You turn it on, and suddenly, it's all illuminated. You can see exactly where you were. Andrew Wiles.